At 8:17 on a wet Thursday night, with stingrays gliding like torn silk above the glass ceiling of the Blue Vault restaurant, Kang Si-hwan lifted a gold fountain pen over two adoption forms, while the aquarium light turned his knuckles the color of cold seawater. Under the white linen tablecloth, the identical little girls he was about to adopt were building a fort out of folded menu cards and sugar packets. One had tucked a butter knife into her sock like treasure. The other had balanced a candied kumquat on top of a water glass and was watching it wobble with serious concentration. Nia Okoye set down a silver tray of pear tea beside his elbow, caught sight of the girls' faces, then of the old brass fairy token tied to one child's wrist with frayed red thread, and felt the room go sharp around her. She did not gasp. She did not drop the tray. She leaned 1 inch closer, enough for the scent of chilled tea and sesame oil to lift between them, and whispered into the space beside his ear. "Don't sign that. They're yours." The nib of the pen stopped just above the paper. Across from him, Madame Bayek Oksun did not miss the pause. Nothing escaped that woman when money, blood, or appearance was at stake. Her pearl spoon remained in her hand, halfway to her mouth, while the lawyer beside her glanced up from the forms. "I beg your pardon," the lawyer said. Nia straightened before anyone could accuse her of familiarity. She wore the Blue Vault's dark green service dress, apron tied tight at the back, hair wrapped in a satin scarf the color of plum skin. Her face had gone still in the way it did when fear was trying to make a home in it, and she was refusing the invitation. Si-hwan turned his head and looked at her properly. He was not handsome in the easy way photographs claimed. Photographs softened him. In person, there was too much precision to him. His shirt cuffs were folded exactly once. His watch sat with military neatness against his wrist. Even the scar near his jaw looked deliberate, as if the skin had learned discipline from the man beneath it. He had the kind of quiet that made waiters lower their voices and men with bodyguards check the exits twice. But in that suspended second, the authority in him shifted into something else. Confusion first, then offense, then something darker, because his gaze had dropped to the fairy token tied around the little girl's wrist. "Ara," he said softly. The child under the table looked up. Her sister Dara looked up too, both girls with the same crescent eyes, the same straight fringe, the same habit of lifting a finger to the left eyebrow when startled. It was a tiny gesture, easy to miss. Nia didn't miss it. Neither did he. Madame Beck placed the spoon down with care that felt more dangerous than anger. "Remove her." Two men at the far wall started forward. Si-hwan didn't raise his voice. He didn't even turn fully in his chair. "No." That stopped everyone. Rain crawled down the aquarium glass beyond the restaurant windows in silver veins. Somewhere under the low string music, the filtration pumps hummed through the walls. On a neighboring table, a candle bent in the draft and corrected itself. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Chairman Kong, the agency representative is on her way up. We're already behind schedule." Si-hwan's eyes stayed on Nia. "You have 1 sentence," he said. "Choose it carefully." Nia could feel Madame Bayek's fury like heat off metal. She could feel the twins staring at her under the tablecloth. She could feel the old weight of 6 years pressing at the back of her throat. "They were born at St. Bridget House under another name," she said. "Their mother left a letter for you, and that token was tied to one of their blankets." The room did not explode. It tightened. Madame Bayek's lips moved into something that would have become a smile if cruelty and amusement had ever shared a face comfortably. A waitress from the dessert shift is now inventing maternity histories in front of my family. I'm not inventing anything, Nia said. The lawyer rose, half out of his chair. Security. Si Juan placed the gold pen down on the tablecloth. It made almost no sound, but the entire dinner changed shape around it. Everyone except my aunt, the children, and this waitress, he said. Leave the room. The aquarium ceiling turned slowly overhead, schools of silver fish moving like brushed coins in deep blue light. Chairs scraped. Security glanced toward Madame Baek. The lawyer hesitated. One of the twins bumped her head under the table and whispered an indignant, "Ow." Si Juan crouched before anybody else could. He lifted the edge of the cloth, looked under, and all the steel in his posture loosened by a degree when he saw the girls blinking up at him. "Stay where you are for a moment," he told them. "No more knives in socks." Ara solemnly pulled the butter knife out and offered it to him handle first. He took it. Nia watched the exchange and understood in one clean strike of instinct why the mother had never been able to stop loving him long enough to save herself from him. He rose and handed the butter knife to Nia without looking away from the twins. "Take them to the pastry room," he said. "Somewhere quiet. If anyone stops you, tell them I said so." Madame Baek's voice sharpened. "You are taking orders from staff because she whispered a line that belongs in a television drama." Si Juan turned then, and the restaurant seemed to dim around the force of that calm. "No," he said. "I am delaying a signature because you taught me early that the timing of a lie matters more than the volume of it." For the first time since Nia entered the room, Madame Baek's expression changed. Not much. Just enough for a person who knew fear to recognize its shadow. The pastry room behind the blue vault smelled of orange peel, butter, and refrigerator cold. Sugar flowers for tomorrow's banquet sat in trays along the stainless counters, pale and impossible. A pastry torch clicked somewhere on the far side of the room, where a junior chef had abandoned half-finished caramel spirals. Nia settled Ara and Dara on a flour sack turned sideways, handed them each a custard tart from the cooling rack, and crouched to retie the red thread around Ara's wrist. Up close, the fairy token was even more familiar. Brass, worn smooth on one side, stamped with a whale tail and the old Yongdo line number. She had held its match in her hand once before, in another kitchen, under another roof, while a frightened woman with blood on her lip and rain in her hair whispered, "If he ever comes, give him this first. Not the letter, this." The door swung open. Si Juan stepped in alone. He had removed his suit jacket. The white shirt beneath was uncreased except at the elbows. He closed the door behind him and leaned back against it for half a second. Not from fatigue, but from calculation, as if choosing which version of himself would be the least useful right now. "Start from the part you can prove," he said. Nia looked at the twins. Dara was already eating with both hands. Ara was turning the brass token over against her palm, making it click softly against her thumbnail. "Years ago," Nia said, "I worked nights at St. Bridget House above the old Harbor Road. It was part shelter, part maternity home. Not legal enough for wealthy people, not public enough for women who needed protection. Your daughters were born there." His face did not move. Only his hand did once, closing around the back of a metal chair. "You are very certain with a stranger's life. I was there when the labor started." "You watched the births?" "I boiled towels, ran ice, got shouted at by a nurse from Incheon who thought everyone breathed too loudly. I remember the storm outside. I remember your daughters came 7 minutes apart. I remember their mother kept asking if the fairy bells were real or just rain in the pipes. Dara stopped chewing. Fairy bells? The child asked. Nia's throat tightened. Yes, baby. Si Juan looked at the twins, then back at Nia. What was her name? Seo Yunbi in the records. But that was false. The woman called herself Seo Rin the first week, Seo Min the next, and finally told me her real name when she thought she might die. He waited. Hanji Un, Nia said. The chair in his hand made a tiny sound against the tile. Not dramatic, not loud, just enough metal on stone to mark impact. The twins kept eating. Si Juan turned his face slightly away, the way people do when memory arrives not as comfort, but as insult. Nia saw it all in fragments, the small muscle pulling once near his mouth, the swallow he did not hide, the way his shoulders held steady only because he had trained them to. When did she die? He asked. I never saw a body. That brought his attention back fast. Nia reached into the hidden pocket sewn inside her apron and pulled out a flattened envelope wrapped in waxed bakery paper to protect it from kitchen moisture. The paper was old enough to have softened at the edges. The front held one line of handwriting in blue ink that had bled with age but not disappeared, for Kang Si-Huan only. He stared at it without taking it. Madame Bayek's voice sounded from outside the pastry room, muffled and furious, giving instructions to someone with the clipped assurance of a woman who believed every locked door in Busan could be opened for her. Nia lowered her voice. She wrote it the day before the shelter fire. The fire was on the news, he said. Electrical fault. 3 dead. That's what the paper said. And you kept this for 6 years? There it was, the accusation. Hard, deserved, ready. Nia held his gaze. I kept it because after the fire, the babies were gone, the records were gone, and 2 men who had never been inside a maternity home in their lives were suddenly asking the kitchen staff whether anybody had seen a brass token or a letter. One of them worked for your aunt. At that, the pastry room went still. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to step back. Ara lifted the tart shell from her plate and peered through it like a little golden telescope. Dara, his face got colder. Dara nodded. Like the fish room. Si Juan looked down at the girls. Something undefended crossed his face and disappeared so quickly it might have been invented if Nia had not been paying such close attention. He finally took the envelope. He did not open it. Why tell me tonight? He asked. Nia glanced at the token on Ara's wrist. Because I volunteered at Harbor Light Home last winter and saw the girls there. I recognized them by the birthmark behind Dara's ear in this token. I tried to reach your office 3 times. Once by mail, once through your foundation, once by waiting outside Moran Tower for 4 hours in sleet. I got your security chief's assistant, your legal department, and a woman who told me if I kept saying children belong to powerful men, I would end up apologizing to a police officer. A beat passed. I was not invited into the room tonight, she continued. I was carrying tea. Then I saw your name on the papers and her daughter's under your table, and the same token she kissed before they were born. So I stopped you before you signed your own children away as charity. The last line hung there, not because it was dramatic, because it was exact. Outside, a tray crashed in the service corridor. Somebody swore. Madame Bayek's heels moved away, then back again. Si Juan opened the envelope. The paper crackled with age. Nia looked down instinctively, as if the privacy of grief still deserved manners, even in a room full of spun sugar swans. He read in silence. Once, then again more slowly. When he finished, He folded the letter with precision that cost him something and placed it on the counter beside a tray of apricot glaze. "What did she tell you?" he asked. "That if a girl cried in a room full of men, you counted to 5 before speaking because anger made your voice worse. That you hated the smell of burnt milk. That you carried fairy tickets long after everybody else switched to cards. That if she disappeared, it wouldn't be because she wanted to." He gave a short breath that was not laughter. "She said all that. She also said if her babies ever met you and touched the left eyebrow when startled, I should not let anybody tell them blood was a rumor." Ara touched her left eyebrow. Dara copied her at once. Neither child knew why. Si-Huan sat down on the nearest metal stool, as if the room had abruptly become less stable under his feet. He was not a man built for collapse. Nia could see that. He would rather split a table cleanly in two than let his knees advertise weakness. So instead he sat with discipline, elbows on thighs, one hand holding the envelope, the other laid flat over the gold-stitched knee of his trousers, as if he were instructing himself to remain in his own body. Dara slid off the flour sack and approached him. Nia started to stop her, then didn't. The child stood between his knees, studying him with the bold seriousness only 6-year-olds and surgeons ever seemed to possess. "Are you the man from the boat song?" she asked. His head lifted slowly. "What song?" Dara hummed 7 notes. It was not a full melody, just a broken little line, wavering at the end. But Si-Huan's face changed in a way Nia would remember years later more clearly than rain or light or glass. Not because he cried. He didn't. Not then. It was the opposite. Every part of him went so still that grief became visible through the absence of motion. "That song," he said, very quietly. "I wrote on a napkin in 2019 because Ji-un said the fairy horns always sounded one note too lonely." Ara joined in from the flour sack, humming the same 7 notes through a mouth full of tart crust. Nia felt her eyes sting before she could stop them. The pastry room door opened again. This time, it was not Madame Bayek. It was Wu Tae-seok, Si-Huan's chief of security, a broad-shouldered man with a healed burn near one temple and the alert patience of someone who could clear a room faster than most alarms. He took in the scene in one sweep: the children, Naya, the open envelope, the chairman seated instead of standing. His face gave away nothing. "Sir," he said, "Madam is calling the agency representative back upstairs. She says the signing will resume in 10 minutes. Si-Huan rose. The transformation was brutal in its speed. Whatever had moved through him on the stool vanished behind the cleaner, harder architecture of the man who ran ferries, warehouses, side negotiations, and the fear of 1,000 smaller men. "It will not resume," he said. Tae-seok nodded once, accepting the statement as weather. Si-Huan looked to Nia. "Did anyone else know what was in the letter?" "No." "Did Ji-un mention where the girls would be sent if anything happened to her?" "She said only that a donor had promised a safer house inland, but she didn't trust the donor. She kept saying a woman with lacquered nails and a soft voice had been asking too many questions about whether the babies were healthy. Madame Bayek's nails, tonight, were lacquered the color of black plums." Si-Huan's jaw shifted. "Bring my aunt to the tea room," he told Tae-seok. "Not the main dining room, the small one with the folding screen." "Yes, sir." "And Tae-seok." The security chief paused. "Until I say otherwise," Si-Huan said, "nobody from the agency, the foundation, or my family speaks to these children alone." The order landed with weight. Tae-seok's eyes flicked once toward the twins. "Understood." After he left, Nia expected Sihuan to hand the girls over to staff. Instead, he rolled up his sleeves once, crossed the room, and crouched again, so he was eye level with Ara and Dara. "I need to speak to some adults who have been wasting my time," he said. "You are going to stay here, eat anything the chef gives you, and tell this waitress if anybody makes you uncomfortable." Ara considered him. What if they are smiling when they do it? Nia looked sharply at her. Sihuan's expression did not change, but something in his voice did. It lowered into an honesty children understand faster than adults. "Then, tell her first." Dara lifted the brass token. "Can we keep this?" He touched the worn edge with one fingertip and let the touch remain half a second too long. "Yes," he said, "for now." He turned to Nia. "You're coming." The tea room on the private mezzanine was lined with old naval maps behind glass and smelled faintly of ginseng, wax polish, and the storm pushing at the windows. A carved wooden screen separated the low table from the corridor. The restaurant noise could not fully enter. It felt like the sort of room designed for promises nobody intended to keep. Madame Bayek was already there. She stood near the window in a charcoal silk hanbok coat with silver stitching at the cuffs, elegant enough to calm newspapers and frighten prosecutors. She had raised Sihuan after his father's murder and never let anyone forget the debt of it. Her hair was gathered into a smooth, low knot. Her pearl earrings did not shake when she turned. "So," she said, "we are conducting family matters with catering staff present." Nia stayed near the door. Sihuan took the seat opposite the empty teacups and laid three things on the lacquered table between them: the unsigned adoption forms, the letter, the brass fairy token. Madame Bayek's eyes rested on the letter a moment too long. "There are two ways tonight continues," Sihuan said. "One is slower. It involves police, audits, and a level of public embarrassment that will wrinkle even your sleep. The other is faster. It involves you telling me when you first knew those girls were mine." The older woman sat down, smoothing one sleeve before answering. "If I answer, will you pretend you asked out of filial respect rather than humiliation?" "I stopped pretending for you years ago." Nia felt the temperature in the room drop. Madame Bayek looked at her. "And you are?" "Nia Okoye." "Occupation?" "Tonight." The reason he didn't sign. That bought the smallest glance from Sihuan, fleeting and unreadable. Madame Bayek leaned back. "You have courage or no long-term plans." "I've had both before," Nia said. The older woman's attention returned to her nephew. "Those girls should have entered this family through your front door years ago. They did not. I corrected the route. By making me adopt them like a donor with guilty publicity needs." "Would you prefer the phrase, abandoned heirs?" He said nothing. That silence seemed to satisfy her enough to continue. "Ji-un came to you at the worst possible time," Madame Bayek said. "Your brother had just been buried. Half the port wanted your head and the other half wanted your signature. She was the daughter of a union man who hated this family in public and took our money in private. She became pregnant and disappeared before anyone could decide whether the babies were leverage, weakness, or bait." "She disappeared because someone ran her off the road," Sihuan said. "A pity," Madame Beck replied. Nia felt her hands curl inside her apron. Sihuan did not move. "When did you know?" Madame Beck picked up the token, turned it once, then placed it down with careful distaste. 5 years ago, she said. A private clinic in Ulsan confirmed the bloodline from cord samples retained at birth. I paid for the test because I was tired of guessing which rumors might grow teeth. For a moment, the storm against the window sounded louder than the room. Nia stared at her. So that was it. Not suspicion. Not management. Proof. You knew, Sihuan repeated. Yes. And instead of telling me, I kept them alive. The words snapped through the tea room like a hand across water. Madame Bayek's chin lifted. Do not revise history into sentiment just because a waitress has discovered timing. 2 children carrying your name openly at that moment would have been an invitation for every petty viper on the coast. Your brother's killers had cousins. Your father's creditors had sons. A child is not safer because she is acknowledged. Sometimes she is safer because she is misfiled. Nia stepped forward before she meant to. Then why the adoption announcement tonight? Why the cameras downstairs? Why the foundation release prepared with their photographs? Madame Bayek's gaze slid to her like a blade. Because, the older woman said, children cannot remain misfiled forever. Better to bring them in as beneficiaries than as heirs. Better to let a man appear generous than vulnerable. The shape of the lie revealed itself all at once. Nia saw it happen in Sihuan too. Adoption meant gratitude, control, trust structures, committees, foundations. A benevolent chairman saving 2 orphans he could keep legally close while keeping their blood quiet. He gave a small nod, not of acceptance but of completion, as if a sum had resolved. So that is the architecture, he said. You wanted my daughters under my roof, without my name under theirs. Madame Bayek's answer came cool and immediate. I wanted them alive. You wanted them manageable. I wanted you unblackmailable. Nia thought of the letter in the pastry room, the mother's blue ink running slightly where a tear or rain had hit it years before. She thought of the twins under the linen tablecloth building, forts with menu cards, while adults rearranged them into strategy. Where was Ji-un when you tested the blood? She asked. Madame Bayek turned. You speak as if invited. I'm speaking because dead women lose arguments quickly in rooms like this. Something like irritation crossed Sihuan's face, but it was not aimed at her. Madame Bayek's reply was smooth. She was gone. Gone where? I was informed she died in the fire. Nia heard the false note in it instantly. So did Sihuan. You were informed, he said. By whom? The older woman did not answer. He reached into his pocket and brought out his phone. Tae Seok, he said when the line opened. Bring me the Harbor Light files, all of them, and the Ulsan Clinic records for any payment made by my